founders know if they're actually ready to raise? And if they're not, what's some practical advice that you have for what they can do to make themselves more investable?
Sure. I mean, I think it's hard to know without knowing the specifics of a particular company. But again, to Rachel's point from earlier, one of the things that we often do when founders send in their deck, and it's not one for us at this point in time, is give them some feedback around what we'd need to see in order for that company to be investable for us. And oftentimes that's the way that relationship does start, and then you might find that you invest down the track.
I would also just say that there are many times where a founder isn't quite ready. Maybe they're still trying to figure out the problem, and there's some customer research that needs to happen. And in Victoria, where we are, we have amazing sets of programs from pre-accelerators to accelerators that can really help founders go from, I understand this problem and I'm not quite sure how to turn that into a business. And so there are tons of accelerators that LaunchVic have sponsored, and now they have even gone into the pre-accelerator space. So there's really an entry point for everyone. And sometimes it's, online learning and self-guided. There's so much information available. Like the internet is full of content. And so great founders should be hungry and thirsty and should be self-servicing that content. Have a good conversation with ChatGPT, but then meet as many people as you can and say, hey, how did you raise your first capital? What can I learn from that? Or what accelerator program did you do that was super helpful? Or who's the mentor that gave you the best piece of advice? Ask those questions and figure out how that you can unlock the incredible resources that we have.
I think one thing that founders probably don't realize is that most of the investors in Victoria have pretty good relationships with each other. We talk about wine, we talk about gin and tonics, we talk about a lot of different types of things.
Sometimes we even talk about the companies we have in common.
Sometimes, but hopefully not too often. But the very first thing that I would suspect that Justine would do if she gets a founder coming to her saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you about raising some capital, and that founder was in our portfolio, is you're probably going to pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, this founder's approached me. What do you think? Is this in line with what your expectations are? And so on and so forth. And those relationships, although we might have different firms that we all represent, those relationships need to be strong because oftentimes, as Tim mentioned before, a few of us are leaning into the company to help do the heavy lifting to get it to the next stage. And so I think founders should be aware that those relationships are quite deep and we work quite closely together.
Just to extend on that, I found it, I think it's very rare for a startup doing pre-series A to have one investor come take a whole round, and which means that we have to collaborate. And that's why I think having that conversation openness is important. But hopefully we do get to a size where we can start being really competitive with each other and we can start taking whole rounds out.
We were just reflecting, we've known each other for 10, 15 years at this point. Rohan, same. Justine, we were just at dinner together not too long ago. And so we bump into each other. And when we bump into each other, we don't just talk about wine and gin and tonic. We talk about companies we've seen. We talk about deals that are interesting. Do you want to co-invest? To the point earlier, many of us are co-investors by design. And so we do work very collaboratively. And the people we reach out to are often the people who we bump into at the cafe or bump into at an event or a pitch contest. And so we have a really tight-knit community here.
What I really appreciate about this investor community is a real frank conversation around why there's no's. I mean, we all don't have to agree on why a company is investable, but what we can share quite comfortably is this is our hesitations, these are the challenges that we see, and we don't necessarily need to agree that that is the deal breaker to a deal, but it allows us to really challenge each other, and I think there's a healthiness to that. I always look at every year the gala that LaunchVic holds, and it is a real community. It is a big room, and I would really challenge to say that can a room like that be brought together annually across the nation? For us, we really acknowledge that our fuel is not necessarily the capital we manage, but the founders we get to work with. And being an early stage investor, we need more early stage companies coming our way. Otherwise, we have nothing to invest in. And particularly looking at time and momentum and horizon. And so a ecosystem that really acknowledges that you need to fill the top of the funnel and keep filling the top of the funnel as much as supporting those at the growth stage and really building better management and better teams and better founders and better scale-ups, almost a high chance of scale-ups succeeding. Having a real robust funnel and having a long-term commitment that it keeps growing is what draws us to an environment like this, where we know that we're not going to come in, do our due diligence on the ecosystem, and then we run dry on deal flow. Having a continuous funnel of new emerging startups that get us out of bed, that makes us smile, that makes us feel young, saying that we're given the same advice 10 times over, is really what keeps us really vibrant. And I think that's the nature of startups, is that innovative flair, and to just keep that spark going is really important.
And speaking of vibrant, we're of course here at Sanders Place in Melbourne, and it's a great co-working and event space with a high focus on impact startups. So it's testament to the number of places and spaces that people can find in Melbourne to connect and build from here.
Well, even just coming in to meet up with you guys, I ran into 2 people I knew downstairs, had a good chat, another co-investor, another founder. So this is the kind of density that we see everywhere. We're here in Cremorne, which is kind of the epicenter of the startup world, but wherever you are in Melbourne, you're going to bump into someone you know, and that's where connections and magic happens.